We talked earlier on about Lego apparently being anti-LGBT, and a story that's similarly ridiculous, frankly, is Ed Miliband's continuing quest to spend all of our money, it seems, on madcap net zero ideas, including £22 billion of your money on unproven carbon capture technology. Now, those words are not just mine, although I totally agree with them. They are the words of the Commons Public Accounts Committee. So, to be clear, a parliamentary committee that has said that Mr. Miliband has not properly investigated whether this technology was affordable, and they are raising the alarm about the viability of the technology. So, yes, just to clarify, Ed Miliband is committing £22 billion of your money on technology that probably doesn't work. And I take you back to the earlier conversations about pensioners, waspy women, farmers, and so on. Well, look, to try and unpack this and see if perhaps we can make sense of it, maybe it is a good idea. Let's speak to Andy Mayer, who's an energy analyst at the Institute of Economic Affairs. I suspect, Andy, you think this is as nuts as I do.
Yeah, so we're here again with carbon capture and storage.
What is it? Can you explain what it is?
Yeah, so very simply, when you have a big industrial process, such as making cement or steel or generating electricity, you emit CO2 from many of those processes, particularly when you use fossil fuels. And the inspiration behind carbon capture is if you can somehow capture that CO2, stick it in a pipe, put it under the ground and put it into something like a saline aquifer or some other geological formation under the sea, then you can remove carbon from the atmosphere. So the excitement about it is about it being a negative emissions technology that may help us tackle some of the UK's targets. The trouble is it's quite an expensive way of doing that.
22 billion quid, no kidding.
Well, yeah, so this is over 25 years. It's about £1 billion a year. And if that was actually the only money that was needed to do it, then you would see industry doing it anyway. And the reason they don't is because if you attach carbon capture technology to industry, including generation, you just make it more inefficient. So about 15 to 40% more inefficient for every process you use. So if you imagine you're a steel maker and Ed comes calling and says, wouldn't it be brilliant if we could have your technology but with carbon captured? They say, well no, because we're an international global business, and if we do that then we won't be competitive. So what you end up with instead is shutting down industry.
So I thought, though, and forgive me if I'm wrong, that our kind of quest towards net zero meant that we were going to have the green and pleasant land of Britain covered with wind turbines and solar panels, and there wouldn't be any fossil fuel emissions anymore. But you're saying this is particularly from manufacturing, which creates carbon.
Well, it's manufacturing and generation.
Right.
So while we still need fossil fuel-based generation, which is going to be at least 10 to 20 years, if not longer,
yeah,
we might need this if it made sense. The problem is it doesn't make sense.
Well, it doesn't. It's expensive, but also what's happening in the United States, drill, baby drill, and in China and India and elsewhere is that in our pathetic quest to get to net zero, given that I don't think the question is settled, the debate is settled with regard to this whole kind of carbon equals planetary heat thing anyway. But even if we do get to net zero, even if we do spend £22 billion on carbon capture to help us get to it, isn't it completely and utterly negated by the increase in fossil fuel output from those three biggest countries on the planet in terms of their output?
Yeah, well, definitely that. I mean, the UK produces less than 1%.
So it's a complete waste of money.
And falling.
So it's a complete waste of money.
Yeah, so this has been known about for 20 years when they first started trying to do it. And everybody sensible told successive governments, don't try and do a massive plan for carbon capture and storage. Set a carbon price in the economy, which we already have. It's about £45 per tonne of CO2. And if they can do carbon capture and storage at £45 per tonne, then do it. They'll just get on with it. Leave it well alone. Let industry come together and see if they can produce it. But the reality is, if carbon capture and storage was going to work, the Chinese would have done it. They've got the massive industrial clusters. They use coal-fired power. They're the ones who could actually demonstrate it working. We're not. we're mostly a service-based economy. We've already got rid of large parts of our heavy industry.
And the worrying thing is, Andy, that even Dale Vince, who, I think it's fair to say he is on the more extreme side of the climate debate. Dale Vince of Ecotricity, the man that receives lots and lots of subsidies from the taxpayer to make lots and lots of money for his business, essentially based on so-called renewables and sustainable energy. Even he doesn't agree that carbon capture works.
Yeah, so we've got to be a bit careful because this is a stopped clock being right twice a day. Dale is in the renewable energy business. The renewable energy industry as a whole does not like carbon capture. It doesn't like hydrogen. It doesn't like nuclear. And there's quite a lot of knocking copy that they put out.
Well, because they compete with their business.
Yeah. But actually, I mean, not even, because you'd still need fossil fuel-based generation, even in a mostly renewable system, because it's when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining, you need proper backup. But anyway, I mean, he's right about this, but he's right for the wrong reasons. And the very simple reason that we shouldn't be doing carbon capture and storage is it's just not economic. If it was economic, you wouldn't need government intervention. And at the levels of subsidy the government are proposing, it's already covered by the carbon price. So £45 per tonne of CO2, 20 to 30 million tons of CO2 is supposed to be saved by this every year. If that were all true, you wouldn't need any intervention. And instead, the government's gone down this very mad, heavy-handed interventionist approach. There's a 300-page document just on the code for connecting carbon capture sites to other technologies, and so it goes on. So they just need to pull back from this, cancel the projects. Let's see if the market with the existing carbon taxes we already have can actually deliver this, and if not, doesn't matter.
And has anyone presumably spoken to Ed Miliband about the fact that this doesn't work?
People have been speaking to Ed Miliband all the time because
So why is he not listening? Why does he think it's okay to spend 22 billion quid of our money, despite the fact that experts like you are telling him it doesn't work?
Well, I mean, I want to be nice to Ed Miliband.
No, don't. Don't do that.
No,
what's the point?
He's actually done something sensible with nuclear power, which is to get the government out of the way from some of it. So neutron Ed we quite like. It's climate Ed and digging a hole in the ground Ed and filling it with carbon that's a bit mad. So, yeah. I mean, let's hope that he's looking at these numbers in this very good report from the Parliamentary Committee and saying we probably can do with a different plan.
Yes, OK. It's just very, very concerning, is it? Particularly when it comes to the economics of this. And as we talked about all show, really, the fact that there's no money, even though the Labour government seem to be continually spending more and more money, particularly on these ridiculous and frankly pointless projects. And of course, this is on top of the, I think it's £18 billion that we're sending to other countries to help them with climate mitigation. So that, by my maths, is 40 billion quid on stuff that doesn't work, is irrelevant, and we shouldn't be spending money on.
So this money hasn't yet been spent. If you go into the detail of the report, the government is saying at the moment this is going to be put onto future bills and future taxes. So it may never happen. But if that's the case, then what the government has done is sent out this signal that they're going to waste money before they've even wasted it. Yeah. So there is a chance to pull back.
Yes, no, indeed. Well, look, let's see. I mean, do you think Ed Miliband can survive this on the basis that most people are saying that, look, this stuff really doesn't work and it's pointless and you're spending, the public's money unnecessarily and inappropriately? I mean, do you see him staying in post to the next election? Seriously, because some of this stuff surely has to come home to roost, Andy, doesn't it? In terms of the futility of this spending, this ideological, nutty approach.
Well, the tension in the cabinet is between the pro-growth mission and the climate mission. Yeah. And if you'd asked me this question last week, then it did look pretty bleak for him because he was offering nothing other than obstruction to growth, of which this is one example. And as I say, the thing that's changed this week is that he's actually taken a different, more free market approach to nuclear power. Not entirely, but that's a start. And if he can learn from his previous mistakes and get the government out of the way in other areas, which he's going to have to do for any of this to work, then maybe he could stay in post. But
well, I'm laughing because the thought of politicians learning from their mistakes is, yes, not something I think is going to happen. Andy Mayer, Energy Analyst, Institute of Economic Affairs, thank you.